Well, hello, it's Angelo Caruso again with a Talk to Me podcast. We have a very unusual episode for you today, a very special guest. Before I introduce Jesper, I want to remind you, if you're watching on YouTube, you can, of course, catch the audio version of all of these interviews on the Podbean and iTunes platforms, all of them, really. And if you're listening on Podbean or one of the audio podcast platforms, you can watch all of the videos on the Angelo Caruso YouTube channel. Be sure to click the red subscribe button and also that silver notification bell so that you're notified of new content. This is a very timely topic today, everybody, because my new friend Jesper Lindholt is, he's a Ukraine refugee. He's actually got Danish background, and we're going to find out all about him in a minute. But we are about 2 weeks into the Russian conflict, what some more accurately describe as a Russian invasion into the Ukraine. And Jesper, I really appreciate you being with me. When everybody finds out what you're stopping, what you're not doing so that you can be with me, they're going to be so impressed at your boots on the ground mentality. And I know that you have a long-time commitment to the Ukraine, so you're quite serious about the situation. You're not somebody who's going to desert the scenario. First of all, where are you today, sir?
Hi, Michael. Great to be with you. Today I am in Denmark, my native country, in our summer house. Very temporary accommodation for us.
I understand you've spent some time in Poland recently.
We got across the border 2 weeks ago and spent a couple of days in Poland. I was hoping that my guys in the company would be able to come over and we could sort of regroup in Poland, but they closed the borders for 18 to 60-year-olds, and then I decided just to go back to Denmark.
I have forgotten which day the conflict actually started. Just so people have a framework here, it's less than 2 weeks. What is it, 10, 12 days?
It is 14 days since they went into it was on the 24th of the morning that the first missiles hit.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting to me that and I'm going to check on your family. Everybody safe in your immediate circle?
Yes, we're all safe. We my mother-in-law, we moved from southern Ukraine to Kiev more than a month ago when we saw black clouds on the horizon, and so when it turned bad, it was really easy for us to head off.
Yeah, it's surprising to me how many people did not pay attention to those storm clouds coming. For weeks that we were hearing about Russian troops amassing on the Ukraine border. Everybody yawns, no big deal. The number keeps growing. It grew to 100,000 troops. That's a significant movement. No world leader moves 100,000 people without intentions of actually doing something with those troops. But everybody was kind of just, there's Putin again exercising his manliness, but he meant it this time. Before we knew it, they had the Ukraine surrounded on 3 sides. And then 2 weeks ago, roughly to the day, the fireworks started. You have a business in Ukraine, or had a business? What's the status of that?
Well, I have a business of 60 software developers in Kiev and in Lviv, to the west of the country.
Are they still there?
They are. I think about 5 got out. I have one guy who's in Kharkiv, surrounded by the Russians, and I have one guy in Kiev who couldn't leave because he had COVID and pneumonia, and he is leaving today. I think if he's not driving right now, he's getting out of the city and then driving to the west, to Lviv. And
I saw a tweet early on when the soldiers were amassing at the border, the Russian soldiers, and the joke was, I'll bet they're not socially distanced, because Russia's having a bear of a time with COVID as well. Mm-hmm. So on top of everything else, there's the COVID concern that if you're sick and you should be quarantining, how do you gather with other people in hiding if you're supposed to be isolating. I mean,
Yes.
it's just a bizarre situation.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we had a huge peak just about a month ago where infections grew exponentially to a very, very high level. And I think that it just ripped through the population, the Omicron, and it's all over now. Now we have people hiding out in underground metro stations and stuff.
Okay.
But COVID disappeared from the radar. It just like fog in the morning. The sun just
Thank goodness. That would have been
all,
like that would have been like double jeopardy.
yeah.
So let's go back to your employees that are stuck in Russia. Are stuck in Ukraine? Are you still communicating with them? Are you able to?
We have social media or chat forums where we talk to each other. We have separate teams where we talk to each other.
Okay.
So we're in talk with everybody everybody has some kind of contact every day. Most of them are working. We're probably at 80% capacity delivering, although we have one group, we have a small community up in the mountains of maybe 10 employees and their families. Okay. At a next to a ski resort. So we try to, when things got hot, we try to guide them to the mountains because that's the safest place.
Yeah. I know that most of the adult population has been conscripted into service in Ukraine. Your people are they Ukraine? Are they from the Ukraine? Are they foreigners from other countries? What's the story there?
We have. They're all Ukrainians, and I'm the odd one out. And I have a girl who's Russian, who was scared incredibly. She's been in Ukraine for also 10, 15 years, but she was married to a Ukrainian and all local, but she was scared. So she got out a couple of days ago to Poland.
Yeah. It's just almost impossible to think about all of the combinations of circumstances here. I was reading about how over 1 million people have now left Ukraine, and about 1/5 of them have actually gone back to Russia, or gone to Russia, I should say. And I never even thought of that because I thought everybody would naturally be leaving to go to Poland, but people have reasons for going back to Russia.
I would be surprised if 200,000 people would have gone to Russia because they would need to cross an active war zone to do that.
Well, wouldn't they have surrendered and said, I don't want to fight. I see the light, Mr. Putin. I want to come back to you. Wouldn't there be some people like that?
Yeah, but the no cities have been taken except for Kherson. It's the only city that has been taken by the Russians. Everything else is just land territory, yes. and torched ground, and to cross the line of fire, active fire, to get into Russia, I would be surprised.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, Jesper. Your lighting is changing quite a bit. Can you get some more light on your face? Easily enough or no?
Yeah, I can do that. 1 second.
I don't know if it's getting cloudy or the clouds are rising.
The sun is moving, or I can turn like this. I have lots of sun. I'll turn around.
A little bit better.
1 second.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
I know that people want to be able to see your face and
yeah. There we go.
Have a guest in the home, I see.
Yeah, that was my daughter.
I'm so glad you guys are safe. So we're back now to this such an unusual situation. You have been actually helping deliver, at least Tom Brown told me this, the friend that kind of got us together today, also a Rotarian, that you had been delivering night scopes and other types of supplies to the border. Yeah,
well, the war started 8 years ago, and there's been occupation of Ukraine by the Russians for 8 years, and for 3 years, I, with family and friends, were helping out, buying cars and delivering them to Ukraine for use as ambulances in red zone, off road, after when the asphalt stops, and then to where somebody is hurt. And it's it was more than 50 cars that we brought over.
I saw the Facebook group to kind of keep communication going.
Yes, yeah, and And so it's like every 5 miles on the front line, there would be a car that we delivered. So I think we saved a lot of lives on that account. Yeah. And it was sort of tricky for some people, because are we helping the army or are we helping? Yeah, well, we're not hurting anybody, that's for sure. And we are putting our efforts on into what we believe is right. Yeah. And changing things, but tipping the scales a little bit towards what we think is right. So,
sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah. So after I got back, a little more than a week and a half ago, then I was sitting there, got to do something, and actually in the car going back, a buddy of mine writes and says, "I'm in Prague. I'm buying two-way radios for territorial defense, which is a newly created local defense force, and we don't have radios. Can you find €1,000, which is like $1,200, and help us pay this?" Okay, I post on Facebook, and I'm driving up through Poland, and I don't see anything. And then the phone starts going ding, 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 ding. And so I pull over another 30 minutes later, and we have around $10,000. Okay. Because people were just so excited and so engaged in what is happening. And so we went and bought three cars, one off-road, two vans, and filled it with military clothes and stuff that was collected, sleeping bags, all kinds of stuff for these guys. And as we're driving, I get a call from other friends from back in the ambulance days, and says, "There's a shipment coming from Lithuania. Can you give them a call?" And I call Lithuania, and there's some guys with 36 night scopes. So we meet at a gas station north of Warsaw, and I get the 36 night scopes, which is just unbelievably valuable to people in the field.
Yeah.
On top of that, my guys in the company had put money together and bought another night scope, which we thought was great. But then when we had 37 of them, then it's like
amazing. The logistics and there was a term invented a long time ago called guerrilla warfare, which describes less than organized, less than funded armies doing their best. In fact, the Revolutionary War, I don't know how much you know about American history, but George Washington was totally undermanned against Britain, England at the time, and he won through a concept called Fabian, F-A-B-I-A-N, the Fabian strategy, which was you just keep it alive until the other guy gets tired and goes home. And it's come to my mind a couple of times now that's kind of what we're waiting for here, because the Russian army is much better equipped and much better funded than the Ukraine army, yes?
Oh, yes, very much. But they're going nowhere right now. And it's such a surprise that 2 weeks into their head-on full invasion with supposedly complete dominance of airspace, that they've managed to take one single harbor city, right? Yeah. That the capital is standing, second largest city is standing, everywhere is standing.
I want to get to what's happening strategically and also Putin's endgame here in just a second. You mentioned that only one city has fallen. How do you know a city has fallen? Is there an announcement? Does the mayor of the city wave a white flag? How does that work?
Well, there's a constant flow of information, and Twitter is the newspaper of the day. Yes. Because things change so rapidly, and sometimes you don't even know if a city has fallen or not. But you have to look at the announcements coming out from the city, as you said, and what the military says, which will never be the truth, the full truth at least. But
yeah, I have trouble with the truth on Twitter in general anyway. But imagine propaganda. Imagine a Russian bad actor saying such and such city has fallen, and it really hasn't. And then the people in the city read that their city's fallen, and then they assume that all is lost, and then they come out with their hands up. There's all kinds. This is an electronic war in some ways. That's why it was so important to keep the internet happening in Ukraine, so that everybody could communicate. We could actually hear from you guys.
Yeah, it's very surprising to me actually that all communications are still on, that mobile networks are running, so mobile internet and all and land-based internet is running, but probably the truth and open communications is more important and valuable to the Ukrainian side than to the Russian side.
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about the truth. Let's talk about the end game here. Everybody that I know, every sensible person, scratching their head, wondering what Putin's end game can be, because even if he succeeds in taking Ukraine, he'll be a pariah. Russian economy will be ostracized and cut off from the rest of the world. What is this about? Could it just be about ego? Has he lost his mind? What is your view of what's really happening here? What's the truth?
I think he is in over his head. I think he was expecting to take Kiev in 2 days with a blitzkrieg that would break the morale of the Ukrainian people, and instead he suffers logistical problems of all kinds. He has this long line of tanks up north that is moving nowhere for several days. His planes get shut down because the Ukrainians actually have good shoulder weapons for shooting down planes. His helicopters get shot. People get killed. They run out of fuel. There's stories of people jumping out of a tank and asking if somebody would give them food, and they would give them gasoline or diesel. And so all kinds of crazy stories that indicate that they were just not prepared for this. And,
which is stunning, because again, all that trouble to move 100,000 alleged troops, but it doesn't seem like they have any training, any strategy, any supply chain, all the stuff that you would expect from an organized army.
No, organized mobster.
What'd you say?
I said an organized mobster.
Organized mobster. Mobster. It's
kind
of smacks of that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
For our friends that aren't up on their German, blitzkrieg is an old term that I think comes from World War II. It was designed to describe this kind of a full-scale, in basketball, they call it a full court press. Everybody's coming at you at the same time. They use it in football once in a while when they're blitzing a quarterback. But it turned out to be like a half a blitzkrieg or something. I don't know, a hologram of a blitzkrieg. They're coming in, but they seem so impotent. There's much has been made about the killing of innocent women and children. There was it would be laughable if it wasn't such a serious scenario. The headline on a website recently of a mainstream platform, do the Russians not care, or are they actually that bad at aiming? What do you think?
I think, first, I think Putin got into this mess by a series of steps that he had not totally foreseen. He started putting the 100,000 people around Ukraine, hoping to force the hand of the president or NATO to give promises that Ukraine would never leave NATO and to demilitarize the country. That didn't work. Well, if that didn't work, then if his bluff was called, well, he couldn't let that happen. So he had to take the next step. Okay, then he went and invaded, and he hoped that then it would be a 2-day thing. Well, it turned out it's a 12-day thing, and he hasn't achieved any of his strategic, even tactical objectives. And now what do you have to do? And I would just be afraid of tactical nukes being the next step that he would sort of be forced to take.
Yeah. And another interesting thing that's happened, that's never happened before, is this blitzkrieg of sanctions that's been put upon Russia. The Russian people, a lot of them, are unhappy with their own leader now because they're being inconvenienced. What might not have been that great of a life in the first place in a communist country is even worse now than it ever was. All the companies are shutting down, denying, what do they call it online? Denial of service, DOS.
Yeah.
And thousands are taking to the street. They can't possibly arrest all of the people that are protesting. Now he's got a problem domestically as well as, and he's extremely weak. Should somebody decide to make a move against him, I read that 90% of his armed forces are focused on Ukraine.
Yeah, yes, I mean, and they're all inside Ukraine now.
I mean, if this was a chess game, man, you'd be a rank amateur.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you know how to play euchre, but usually you get euchred by other people. You don't euchre yourself. Wow. What are your views on some of the chatter about NATO and the lack of military support for Ukraine? Do people over there understand it? Are they bitter?
Objectively, there's a continuous convoy of smart weapons going into Ukraine right now, and Ukraine would not have been able to defend itself as it has without the javelins and the British Swedish equivalents and the Stinger missiles. So they're making a huge difference, just absolutely changing the game.
But it's not the same as air support. It's not the same as another army weighing in.
Absolutely not. No. And the Ukrainians have focused right now very strongly on closing the sky. And you do like this. You put your hand over. That's the symbol for air protection that people use in demonstrations and stuff. And people are very focused. So it is the big thing for Ukraine right now. And I think it's maybe overdone a bit, because in reality, they have had fairly good control of the skies, but we haven't seen a fraction of the hardware that the Russians have in the sky.
No, the Russian air attack has been almost minimal, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Why is that?
Why is that? I think he was surprised. He thought he could do this in a surgical way.
Yeah, but that's another card that he could play before tactical nuclear options.
Before
he could fly some airplanes over and just end it pretty quickly.
Yes, but he would be afraid. He would be afraid of Stinger missiles, and also it could be changing perhaps the whole the dynamics of how NATO feels about this. But on the other hand, this would be what happened in Syria. So when NATO didn't do anything. Yeah. The best Ukrainians could hope for would be a safe zone in the west, where it could be patrolled by NATO planes flying in Poland, and then go maybe 100 miles into Ukraine, and that would be a humanitarian safe zone.
Much has been made about what happened in Syria and the parallels. Why do you suppose that the outreach and the attention and the care and the passion has occurred this time around for the people of Ukraine, and it didn't happen for the people of Syria?
Well, most members of NATO are European countries, so it happens in our front yard.
Okay, and rather than the backyard or the
neighbor's yard. No, this is right in front of us, and it's a country that has over the last 8-9 years. By many times multiplied its economic relations, social relations, cultural relations into the European Union. There's visa-free travel for 5 years, and Ukrainians have traveled all over Europe, and so it's one of us. It's a neighbor. A neighbor is getting attacked.
I think it's worth mentioning that Ukraine was actually on its way to being a member of NATO. I heard it described that they were a partner, but not yet a member. Whereas, and I don't know where Syria stood in that ranking, but relationships take time to build, and I do think Ukraine was on a better path, a faster path to that type of relationship, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think it was going the right direction, not as fast as we were hoping for internally, but every month things were in general a little bit better.
Let's go back to the signaling. You mentioned that this was a hand signal that meant we're looking for air support. Is that what that meant?
Yeah.
I read, it was actually reported with some humor, that Ukrainians they've been rather good-spirited about this whole thing, all things considered. I read that some Ukrainians had found time to write graffiti on unexploded missiles that had and they were writing signs like "F off" to the Russians that were around the road, as people were coming in.
It took about a week for the Ukrainians to mobilize their humor because of the shock, but it's coming. It's full force right now, and it's everywhere.
Most people don't think of Ukrainians as terribly funny people. You probably know that.
But they have really, really deep humor. They one of the slogan of the defense, it comes from there's an island called Snake Island off of Romania in the Black Sea, that very early was attacked by a Russian warship, and they radioed to 13 guys on this island and said we are Russian naval ship, surrender. And their answer was Russian. No, in Russian it's Русский корабль, иди нахуй, and it means something like Russian warship, go to. It's fantastic. So it's and it was all recorded. So it's that sentence is now the one of the slogans of the war.
Speaking of humor, President Zelensky, who is a former entertainer, a comic, he got in the hot box with President Trump over here well before the war started, because there was this tense phone call about the president and Ukraine and Russia. We don't have to get into that now. But Zelensky was viewed by many as kind of a celebrity coon politician who didn't really have what it took. He just kind of stepped into a vacuum and got lucky. What are your views of President Zelensky? He's really shown well in this moment, this key moment with the conflict.
He is rocking and rolling. For this, he is perfectly casted for this role.
Do you know him? Have you met him?
No.
Yeah.
But he's perfect for he did not expect getting elected, so that was a bummer, right? I mean, he's an actor who saw, somebody, my job is up. He played the role of a president in a show, and then my job is up, and then he runs like a school teacher who becomes the president, and then this is too much of a temptation. I have to run, and then everybody were looking at him as the blank sheet of paper that he was, and then they put all of their hopes and wishes onto that blank sheet. And then when he won with 70-some%, then now what? Be careful what you wish for.
Who did he run against?
He ran against Poroshenko, which was the former the chocolate baron oligarch.
Another celebrity.
Yeah, and who had been more of a statesman, and who had been with the troops in the east by the contact line and in the occupied areas, and was working hard to integrate with Europe. And he built a party called European Solidarity. So the statesman up against the young hooligan.
It's interesting to think back. What if the chocolatier had won the election and he was in charge now? How might things be different? How would it have rewritten history? Would we be exactly where we are today?
Yes.
Back to signaling for a second. I've said that during COVID, everybody became an expert on everything. Partly due to the information age and all that stuff, but everybody's got access to the same information. We all became doctors. We all became political scientists. We all became experts at everything during COVID. We were talking about signals and how important they are, and I'm just wondering, are we getting the right signal from the Ukrainian people that we're in this for the long haul, and we're determined? I mean, this seems legitimate. This is coming from the heart. These people that have never done anything like this, they really believe in themselves.
Very much, very much. This comes from the heart. And if there's one feeling that is characterizing Ukraine after the initial shock of their brother people, I mean, they're cousins at least, of their brother people attacking them with missiles, it is hatred to the people doing this to them, right? It's civilians getting killed, and the hatred is so thick you could almost cut it in slices. And it's
Hatred
what we
can feed the soul in productive ways if you believe you're righteous and you're fighting for the good cause. As everybody becomes an expert, we kind of delude ourselves into thinking that no one can pull one over on us. And yet the phrase "the Ukraine" did exactly that. The origin of that phrase is from Russia, and it's pejorative, correct?
Yeah, it is.
So Russia said "the Ukraine" as if they were castaways or not as good as us. Tell us about this.
Yeah, as part of the Soviet Union, then it refers to the Socialist Republic of Ukraine, Ukraine. But it goes further back than that to Imperial Russia, which viewed and views Belarus to the north as the White Russia, and then Ukraine is the Mala Rossiya, the small Russia, and then we have proper Russia, and those three together form the Russian Empire, and this is the fundamental thing that the Russians are going after, that we cannot be an empire if we don't have little Russia as part of us.
Right.
So it's a threat to the ambitions that Putin also holds in his heart.
Right. And my point was that what had happened, because Russia had said "the Ukraine" so many times that so many Americans started to say "the Ukraine," which I know is a pet peeve of yours, because we were deluded, we were tricked, we weren't paying attention to what was really happening. The Ukraine is a pejorative term, and we were using it, even though we had no dog in the hunt at the time, because Russia, it was kind of like this propaganda that had kind of taken root in our heads, and we didn't even know it. This is the danger of communication and not listening to people that really know what's going on versus listening to bad actors and people that have negative and nefarious agendas.
Yeah, that's why we need you, Michael.
And you, sir. I'm so glad that we had some time to be together today. Are you still a member of Rotary? What's happening with that? Or were you ever?
I have been a member since 2006. I was a Rotary exchange student in 1984.
Where was your exchange to?
I went to Redlands, California.
Well, not a bad location.
No. Dry, nice and warm.
I came into Rotary through the group study exchange, a program, which is now called VTT. But I was in South Africa, specifically Johannesburg, for 5 weeks back in 1995. And it was a fantastic way to see the world, because at the time, South Africa was its own pariah. I guess South Africa was the pariah in the way that Russia is now. I shouldn't say that, not in the way that Russia is now, but South Africa had its issues back in 1995. Well, listen, I look forward to meeting up with you and having a cup of coffee or a drink sometime after this is all over. I doubt that we'll actually laugh about this time, but I hope that we can celebrate it, sir.
I am looking so much forward to the end of this, as we all are.
Where can people find out more about your company? And is there another website that you want to give us for anybody that wants to send aid?
Well, my company is Levatech, and we work with companies that build software across the world. We relieve bottlenecks of finding talent. So Levatech, livatek.com. And if you want to know how to help, well, you're welcome to hook up with me on Facebook, and you can see my name in the text for this podcast.
Okay, great. And I know that Rotary.org has now set up official channels to get aid to Ukraine, and you can donate in many ways: money, goods. You can partner with various Rotary partners like the Red Cross. There's all kinds of ways to give and send help. Jesper, it's been a pleasure being with you. I'm sorry it's been under a bit of a negative circumstance, but you seem like such a great person, and I'm just so glad to meet you. And I want to thank you on behalf of anyone who cares about Ukraine for all that you've done for the country.
Michael, it was great hanging out with you today. Hope to meet you again. Looking forward.
Thank you, sir.